my name is Samara O'Gorman from the cimpn, and today I'm here with Bryan O'Gallagher. I'll let you introduce yourself, although you don't really need introducing, I find, for the cimpn. Bryan was appointed the Honorary Consul for Quebec by the Government of the Republic of Ireland back in 2024, and he's a proud Irish Quebecer, steadfast supporter of the English-speaking community here in Quebec. I know you also have roles within St. Bridget's Home. You're the president of Irish Heritage Quebec, so tell us a bit about yourself and your connection to the community here.
Well, thanks, Samara. Very happy to have you here in Quebec City today. Just to talk a little bit about this city's somewhat unknown, or rather less well-known, Irish character.
Yes.
Quebec's a very, very French-speaking city, the capital of New France, the capital of Quebec today. But the city has had a very long relationship with the Irish going back centuries. So I'm very happy to have you here today. And in my case, as you mentioned, I have the honor of being Ireland's consul here for the entire province of Quebec in Quebec City. I am the president of Irish Heritage Quebec, a historical group that promotes Irish culture, preservation of our story. And I know you know some of my friends who work actively with me as volunteers. And I am indeed the president of the Board of Governors of St. Bridget's Jeffrey Hill Hospital here in Quebec City, which is a very old, long-standing English-speaking institution in the healthcare system.
Okay, yeah, and I find the Irish community, we all know each other because it's a very loving one, very caring one. Even though I'm from Montreal, I feel like everybody meets or knows each other in some shape or form.
Well, we get to meet in all sorts of great activities across the province.
All
of our parades and our gatherings and commemoration projects,
yes,
and things like that. So it's really good to have you here today.
Thank you, Bryan. I thought we could start off strong. I'm going to ask you about the Bronze Shoes.
Sure.
In the Quebec City region, which is part of the Global Irish Famine Way, an international memorial trail that marks the immigration of tens of thousands of Irish immigrants. And as of now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that there are two sets of Bronze Shoes in the Quebec City region, Grosse-Île and in Old Quebec.
And the Port of Quebec.
Yeah, with many more popping up around the country. In your opinion, I'm wondering, why is it important for Irish communities around the world to get involved in this project, and why is the monument itself, the Bronze Shoes, so striking for tourists?
Well, those who've been to the National Famine Museum in Strokestown, County Roscommon in Ireland will be told the tale of some of our people who had to leave in hard times. And when they left, they walked into the Port of Dublin on their journey away from the country. And that specific group of people, about just under 1,500 people, walked along the Royal Canal into the port, and all sorts of horrible things happened to them along their journey into Canada. But that trail was marked by stone markers topped by bronze children's shoes. So the idea was to bring that trail across the ocean to a country that played a part in that sad story, and that is, of course, Canada. Mm-hmm. The Port of Quebec has been the gateway to Canada and to North America for centuries, going back for over 400 years. So it was fitting that the shoes that arrived by ship on an Irish research vessel in May of 2024 would come to Quebec City and Grosse-Île. So the shoes arrived in Newfoundland in May 2024. There was a pair indeed set up there in August 2024 at Grosse-Île with the help of Parks Canada, who we work with very closely. And another set are going to be launched here in the Port of Quebec down at an area called Browns Basin, which is very heavily associated with the presence of the Irish in the port and in the story of the city. The people who live down in that part of the town were ship laborers, and were loading up wood cut in the forest up above Ottawa, floated down the St. Lawrence River through Montreal, down to Quebec City, loaded onto ships and sent off to the British Empire across the way. So we felt that Quebec City and Grosse-Île were major places in that story. So we were among the first communities to receive those shoes. And as you said, there are shoes in St. Columban. There's a pair of shoes destined for the Black Rock site in Montreal. And there are other Irish communities around the countryside here in Quebec City and around Montreal that are very, very keen on taking part of that, the Global Irish Famine Way also.
Wonderful. And I've heard it's also going to be, if not already, the longest heritage trail in the world. Is that correct? My
friend, previous ambassador to Canada, John, Eamon McKee, Eamon was instrumental in getting this project launched. I can go back to a visit to Grosse-Île in the summer of 2022. We were marking the 175th anniversary of the famine at the time, and we're coming up unbelievably on the 180th, which will be commemorated in 2027. And we were meeting there with the Parks Canada management team, and we had a great ceremony there, a very moving ceremony on the cemetery site. And the idea of including Gros Hill in some way was raised at that lunch after that ceremony, and things happened. So the determination of the Irish, both in Europe and here in Canada, was certainly a positive to making it happen, so we can tell the story.
Yeah, the Irish make things happen, I find.
Indeed, yeah.
I'm going to pivot to St. Bridget's Home for a bit, if you don't mind. You have served extensively with the board and the foundations of St. Bridget's Home, which was originally founded in the 1850s to host
that's true,
to host orphans and the needy, and now it looks and serves a completely different purpose. I'm wondering, in your opinion, how has the mission of this institution evolved to serve the English-speaking community and, like, in Quebec City, while keeping its foundational Irish spirit alive?
That's a great question, because as you mentioned, St. Bridget's was founded in about 1856, thereabouts, in the aftermath of the famine, which brought lots of people over, hundreds of thousands of people across through the port of Quebec. Many of those people stayed here in Quebec City. Others moved on their journey across North America, and now their descendants live anywhere in our country and in the United States. But that strong Irish presence is still here today. St. Bridget's Home is one of those institutions that actually carries on that mission. So originally founded at the same time as the Congregation of Catholics speaking the English language in Quebec City, known as St. Patrick's Parish. Yeah. St. Bridget's Asylum, then as it was known, played a role of an orphanage, an old age home, and just a place to care for members of the community who needed some assistance in tough times back in the 19th century, where things were a little bit different. Yeah. And that mission evolved over time. St. Bridget's Home is now part of the provincial healthcare system. We work with Santé Québec, and our institution is more or less managed in government partnership. However, the community still plays an active role on the Board of Governors, and we also merged with Jeffrey Hill Hospital, yes, the Protestant hospital from more or less the same period in the 1980s to offer English-speaking care here in Quebec City. So we continue to focus on delivering quality care. Mm-hmm. St. Bridget's and Jeffrey Hill are extremely well known in the French community as being places you want to go to, because okay, you will receive attention and a bit of a personalized treatment from the staff members, and that continues today. And we score extremely highly on all the quality of service surveys that people answer.
Brilliant. And I'm a firm believer of the power that a place holds in its name. So you have St. Patrick's High School and St. Bridget's Home, which is named after the very popular Irish goddess St. Bridget, who is the goddess of poetry. I'm a bit biased, I'm a poet, but I feel like having places in Quebec that are still named after those iconic Irish kind of places of origin and figures is very powerful.
That's so true, Samara, because you have towns around Quebec City who continue today to demonstrate that Irish character. So Quebec City itself is now a very large and important city. It's the capital city of Quebec. It's been an important hub for transportation going back centuries, as I said, because of the port. But in the surrounding communities, and these are in pre-famine times, the Irish have been coming here since 1661. Yes. The first recorded Irishman was Tad O'Brennan, whose name was changed to Aubry, and married a lady by the name of Chartier, and they had lots of descendants, and the whole how the Quebecers and French Canadians integrated with the Irish, or the other way around. But that's shown in some of the towns around Quebec City. For example, a town called Shannon, just up the road here. Yes, yeah. Shannon has fantastic heritage preservation work with their dancers, their Shannon Irish show every year. They're world known on the dancing scene. They work closely with the Bernadette Short group in Montreal and other groups around the world, around Quebec. There's a town just north here called Sainte-Brigitte de Laval, and that town is specifically named for St. Bridget, whose feast day is February 1st, and who I'd like to generate a little interest around in addition to March 17th, which we do quite a bit about. But
celebrate both.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and we have other towns, St. Catherine, La Jacques-Cartier, which is also very close to Shannon, is well known as an Irish town. Brian Mulrooney's family came from that town. Yeah. St. Gabriel de Valcartier is another town locally. Frampton, Saint Malachy, Saint Agathe de la Binière, the township of Ireland, in Lotbinière, in Lotbinière County is another example of how we've marked the landscape.
I feel like we can go on and on about those
Sure.
parallels. And I love that you mentioned the first immigrant who had an Irish name and eventually changed it to integrate himself, so to speak. And historically, I would say that like shared Catholicism was the bridge that allowed Irish immigrants to integrate and to intermarry with French Canadians, even when language was a barrier back then.
That's true.
And today, as Quebec society has become highly secular in nature, so to speak, what do you think kind of has replaced the parish and the church as that anchor or glue for the Irish Quebecois identity, or has it been replaced at all?
I think it continues to be strong. I would think that annual activities such as the Shannon Irish Show is one example. The group that I preside, Irish Heritage Quebec, holds monthly conferences. We meet people from all over the world who come to our Quebec City St. Patrick's Parade that was revived in 2010 and has been going strong except for the pandemic period. But we have visitors from the big American police and fire bands who come up because they're free the week or the 2 weeks after their own St. Patrick's feast. So they come and share our town's reputation for having a good time, and they thoroughly enjoy it. And that's another example. And the general population is into it. And you get 50, 60, 70,000 people on the street in Quebec City, a 98% French-speaking town, to come out and celebrate the Irishness of this community.
Yeah, le défilé
de Québec. Défilé de la Saint-Patrick de Québec.
I adore your parade. I come every year. I haven't missed it. The old cobblestone streets. It's always, there's such great energy here. It always draws thousands to the streets. There's marching bands from everywhere. So I'm wondering, from like a historical and cultural standpoint, how do you kind of balance the authentic Irish identity in the parade, but also kind of invite new tourists to come to celebrate the parade? And you mentioned that it came back in 2010. That's over 84 years of a hiatus. Any insight on that hiatus of that time between the 1920s to 2010?
I think that St. Patrick's Day was always celebrated in Quebec City in all sorts of ways, but having a major event like a parade came to the forefront through the determination and the will that my Aunt Marianne O'Gallagher brought to the situation back then. She knew she was in her waning years. She had done all sorts of things around Gros Seal and written books about the Irish story in Quebec City and in the province, of course. But she felt that something that would be great to bring back would be this parade that had stopped in 1929 or something like that. So she convinced a bunch of great and very diligent volunteers to pick up the task, and they did it, and it's been going since then. So it's just more of a continuum. There was that break, but I don't think the break actually meant anything. It's just that it was something time occasionally brings you to review how things are celebrated. And in Mariana's case, she thought that it was time to bring a parade back, and the parade is very strong today.
Oh, very good idea on her part. I feel like I wouldn't be where I was today if it wasn't for the Hudson and Montreal parades. It's such a visceral cultural celebration that it completely turned my life into making me want to explore my identity and my heritage more. And I bet that's not a singular experience. I bet everybody with Irish heritage who shows up to the Quebec City St. Patrick's Day Parade feels the same.
As you know, Samara, there's lots of statistics out there and about the Irish in Quebec and how we've integrated into the majority society over the years. And some people say it's up to 40% of Quebecers have some form of affiliation through blood or through affection to the Irish. Who knows what that number actually is? It's kind of tough to mark. But as I've told many distinguished Irish visitors who've come to Quebec over the years, every other person you will meet as you go along, no matter what their name is, don't be fooled by the names. People may be called Tremblay, and they will tell you that their Irish grandmother is O'Brien, that their aunt is O'Gorman. We all know those stories. Sure. But people come from away from Ireland, especially, and even the United States and other parts of Canada, aren't fully aware of that. And that's something that I'm really happy to share with people. And I think it's a story that's well worth telling.
Absolutely. And with that high percentage of Quebecers that are estimated to have some sort of Irish heritage, do you find that there's kind of a growing appetite for people to explore their ancestry and for heritage tourism? Like, are people traveling specifically to Quebec City for that? And for somebody who's just starting to trace their roots, is there a particular place in Quebec that you recommend to go visit to explore that, such as Crocil, for example?
Well, what you've just said is very true, because something we've noticed at Irish Heritage Quebec since the parade has taken off back in 2010, these American visitors from New York City, Philadelphia, Chicago, Boston come back in the summertime and in their own free time and come and follow up some of the story at Gros Hill. Some have found relations out there on the memorial wall at Gros Hill and have been able to trace some of their family's journey. So that's one example. During the pandemic, when the parade was suspended, the city of Quebec commissioned a video project that took place over 2 years, where they celebrated St. Patrick's Day virtually with actors and recreations and things like that. And one of the animators of that program said that, as far as he was concerned, there was a bit of an Irish Renaissance in Quebec City and in Quebec also generally, on people being interested in looking into their roots and their family's history and how we came to be found together in 2026.
For sure. Speaking of histories, I'm going to kind of delve into lesser known histories for a bit. I feel like the stories of the Irish in Montreal, Quebec City, very well documented. But Irish Heritage Quebec, through our research at the CIMPN, we noticed that you guys have kind of explored more rural or lesser known histories, very niche histories. In your opinion, would you like to share kind of a specific or overlooked piece of Irish Quebec history, perhaps an artifact, a community story that you think deserves a brighter spotlight or that has stayed with you the last couple of years?
I mean, one example of that is the excellent work done by my friend Steve Cameron at Cornell Keltec out in Saint-Agathe-de-la-Binière. Yes. Steve has written extensively about the Irish presence in that part of the province. And again, it's a part of the story that is not very well known. This is pre-famine Irish in Quebec, which is important to highlight, because a lot of people think that the story of the Irish into Canada was only about the famine, and that's not true. People were coming here, as I said, O'Brien in 1661, but there were people coming in the late 1700s and the early 1800s. So these are communities that were built out, as I mentioned, Frampton, Saint-Malachy, Saint Bridget, Shannon, St. Gabriel, and out in Lobinière, where people were living in very tough, harsh environments, poor agricultural land, forests to be cleared, living on hillsides in a landscape that was very much what they had left in Ireland, and they left for lack of opportunity, for poverty, and all sorts of reasons before the famine happened. Mm-hmm. The famine obviously was a major tragedy 20-some years later, 20, 35, 30 years later. But so Steve and his group out in Saint-Agathe tell that story. Most of the people who lived in Saint-Agathe have all moved on majoritarily to the United States. Okay. And they had a big gathering in the summer of 2026 where Steve sort of told them the story of where their people were from and how they came to be here and then where they moved on to. So there's been a lot of interest from outside Quebec on that side of the story. And Steve has a great Celtic cross there on a hillside in Saint-Agathe with family names of the original Irish settlers in that area. Mm-hmm. He has a stone circle, so he's into the Irish spiritual side of things. Yes. And he has a bit of a shelter there that people stop at, and with the picnic lunch as they go by on their car or their motorcycle, whatever. And it's extremely well known in that area. And he's written stories about how the Irish community, both Catholic and Protestant, found themselves living together away from Ireland, and how some of the old grudges continue to be manifested, but then again how the two communities came together and did indeed build their own situation down in Saint-Agathe.
I love that you shared Steve's story, because I feel like truly the roots of Irish preservation is in those lesser known studies, right. In those lesser known monuments, those lesser known stories, and I have to make it out there one day. Absolutely.
Listen, Steve is always open to have a visitor come in, and again, what I found in the last couple of years is we've been fortunate that we're now talking and working together a lot more than we used to. So between Quebec and Montreal, and Hudson, you mentioned Hudson, Chateauguay, and Rawdon came onto my radar screen a couple of years back. They have a fantastic St. Patrick's Festival there, going back almost 50 years. There's a Festival Celte et Compagnie in Saint-Malachy run by James O'Farrell.
Okay.
The same thing up in Shannon we talked about earlier, but there's been, as Jean Lemoine, historian here in Quebec City, said, une renaissance irlandaise is sort of shaped up in the last decade or so. And I think it's just positive for everybody. Yeah. People like to know about where they come from, and I think people who aren't Irish are interested in the story because we've been here for so long.
Absolutely. And all those associations, all those communities that you just mentioned, I think we're all going to band together next year. I want to end on a very positive note, looking ahead, the Canada-Ireland 180 project next year in 2027, which I'm absolutely thrilled about. I think about it all the time. I can't wait for it. It's the 180th anniversary of the 1847 famine migration here to Canada. Can you share with us anything about Irish Heritage Quebec and maybe provincial organizations around? How are you going to shape this commemoration? How are you going to celebrate the commemoration? Can you tell me anything about Canada-Ireland 180 next year?
We've been fortunate to have great support from Irish Ambassador John Kincannon, yes. who's been more or less the initiator of this Canada-Ireland 180 event. And it's meant to go both ways. So Irish people coming to Quebec and Canada to celebrate or commemorate, because obviously it was a famine, a tragic situation, so we'll commemorate it rather than celebrate it. That being said, Mr. Carney, our Canadian Prime Minister, was in Dublin over the weekend and in Westport on Sunday to celebrate his own family journey and roots. And both governments will be financially contributing to make sure the story is well told on both sides. So Irish Heritage Quebec is actually leading a project with some French-speaking partners to take the story from Quebec back to Ireland and perhaps to Paris at the Irish Cultural Centre to tell the story in French and not necessarily in English to an audience that doesn't know a lot about that story. So we're working with some partners like l'Alliance Française in Dublin and others, and the Irish Cultural Centre in Paris to make this some part of the program. Lots of Irish musicians and cultural players, artists coming this way next summer and into the fall. So there will be a very interesting program of two-way communication and sharing.
Very nice. I can't wait for it. I know a lot of others are excited for it. And I think with the rain here in Quebec today, it's a great sign because that's exactly how it looks like in Ireland.
I was surprised. I was there for the weekend with Mr. Carney's gang, and the weather was spectacular.
Only sun? Well, he brought the sunshine.
I was surprised, but I was very happy that he brought the sunshine.
I love it. Well, Sanche, Bryan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.